Assassin's Creed Syndicate is the black sheep of the Assassin's Creed franchise because it's both mechanically confused and, more importantly, because it lacks a central theme of the previous entries. I was recently filling out some design surveys for some guy on the Assassin's Creed subreddit, and one of the questions asked was, how many Assassin's Creed games have you played? And the options were listed, all the way up to 10. And then I started counting on my hands. So I've played Assassin's Creed 1, I've played 2, I've played Brotherhood, Revelations, 3, Black Flag, Rogue, Unity, Liberation, Syndicate, Origins, Odyssey, and heck, I've even dabbled into some of those 2D adventure games, which put my total count way above 10, at like 13 or something. But there was no option for it, and all of this kind of made me reflect and go, holy freaking heck, I've played a lot of these games. I've spent hundreds of hours in the Animus, and I've spent dozens of hours reading crazy theories, watching videos, reading forums, and reading about the history that inspired so much of these settings. I mean, Assassin's Creed 1 inspired me a lot to learn about the Crusades and Salah ad-Din and the Fatimids and the Ayyubids and so on and so forth. And in the past year, I've played both Syndicate, Origins, and Odyssey. And I'm replaying right now, or I guess I'm playing right now, the remastered Assassin's Creed 3. And the entire franchise has just changed so much, but for me, not for the better. If you had to ask me, the mechanical identity of an Assassin's Creed game centers around two systems. You have parkour, and you have unconventional or social stealth. And over the years, as we got farther away from Assassin's Creed 1, this slowly started to change. Before the functional reboot of the franchise that was Origins, I'd argue the farthest away we got from these two core mechanics was in Black Flag, which, as is often talked about now, less of an assassin game and more of a pirate game. The drastic shift back to that urban environment and large crowds in Unity, which can very much be called Assassin's Creed 5, was very much a return to the game of Altair of old. It was a return to form, but instead of continuing to iterate and hone and push on this core framework of the franchise, Syndicate kind of just goes off into La La Land and does some crazy stupid nonsense. Because Syndicate is confused, and a lot of it flows from the grappling rope launcher hook thing. Unlike the condensed and crowded Paris or Rome or New York, London has these massive open boulevards and these towering heights. It became increasingly difficult to run corner to corner of the map solely on rooftops, which was one of my favorite things to do in any Assassin's Creed game. You had to rely on this device that could propel you across these giant open intersections, or up these tall towers, or down off of them, and so forth. And this disincentivized you to climb and to parkour, which was weird for a game franchise that had made its name for all about climbing and parkouring. And the social stealth has slowly gotten eroded too, and in Syndicate, it's the most apparent. Unity did add a crouch button, which I think was a mistake, but at least they still had this strong sense of using the crowds of the French Revolution as one of your primary tools of infiltration. Syndicate kinda had that, but these open causeways that posed a problem for the parkour traversal also posed a problem for social stealth. London was not crowded or cramped in most of the city. Social stealth was replaced with just stealth. And the combat too marked a turning point. Syndicate's jerky button smashing style of play relied less on the counter dance of the previous entries and was much more aligned with the spammy nature of what was to come in Origins and Odyssey. And if you're kind of beginning to see a trend, it's that Syndicate has one foot in the old world of Assassin's Creed and one foot in Assassin's Creed 2.0. Perhaps one of the strongest and clearest points of comparison, how Syndicate is both new and old, is the gang fights in the Peloponnesian battles in Odyssey. In Syndicate, when you've usurped enough influence of a particular gang leader, you have this confrontation between your dudes and the bad dudes. And you get this awkward kind of Gangs of New York style brawl that usually ends in the death of the rival gang leader. This is super similar to the combat-centric battles of Odyssey, where the game suddenly has amnesia, or the franchise suddenly has amnesia and tries to be like an action game for a split second. Syndicate, mechanically, is just weird. It doesn't fit into the mechanical progression of the franchise. It's not a return to form like Unity. It doesn't increase that volume of crowds and chaos of the environment. Instead, it kind of just does a left turn and says it's rope launchers now. And it's not an RPG whackathon like Origins. In fact, it even has less customization style of Unity. It's just confused. It's just weird. weird. It's just so out of place. And this lack of fitting in anywhere, it becomes more apparent when we look at both the thematic and the narrative of Syndicate. And it's really the most isolated game of all of the Assassin's Creed franchise, period. And here's why. A lot of people have their own way of categorizing this long-running franchise that's starting to become as weird and convoluted as Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts. Some people have the Desmond games of classifying the main titles of the AC franchise, or some people have the post-Desmond games. Some people go Assassin's Creed 1, and then you have the Ezio trilogy, and then you kind of have the New World games that are 3, Black Flag and Rogue, and then you kind of get Unity, which was just that buggy mess that nobody likes to talk about, and then you have Syndicate, and then you have the reboots with bAAAH and Cassandra. But to me, and the more and more I've thought about it, I don't really think that any of these ways are good way of looking at the Assassin's Creed franchise as a whole from a thematic or from a storytelling perspective. And I've started to look at the entire franchise by what kind of broad themes or questions it's trying to ask or address. And this is what makes Syndicate stand out even more. So bear with me in my kind of reclassification of these 10 plus Assassin's Creed games. Assassin's Creed 1 to Revelations is what I think should be called the Mediterranean tetralogy. Or you could call it the Altair Ezio tetralogy, up to you. All of these games are centered on locations in the Mediterranean. You have the Levant, Italy, and Istanbul. But more importantly, all of these games are about what it means to be an assassin. Assassin's Creed 1 is basically the formal introduction of what an assassin is. Assassin's Creed 2 is what a journey of what it's like to become an assassin. Brotherhood is about the creation and the significance of Brotherhood, and Revelations is about the importance of the assassins as a history, as an institution. And it's noteworthy because it links our two main protagonists, Ezio and Altair, together, and the mirroring of their legacies and their struggles. The second tetralogy is what I call the 1700s, because all the games are set sometime in the 1700s. But the primary theme of these 4 games is to make us totally question everything we learned in that first tetralogy, which, when you think about it, is great and almost a classical kind of storytelling. The first arc is about creating things we think to be true, and the second arc is forcing us to question these truths and deconstruct them. This can't be more apparent in the 1700s tetralogy. Assassin's Creed 3 has us playing as both a Templar and an assassin, and makes us question both organizations, and suggests at times they're a lot more similar than we've been led to believe. Black Flag has us starting out as a nobody, then impersonating a Templar, and then becoming an assassin out of convenience, an almost uncomfortable sense of convenience at times. Rogue is kind of the opposite of Black Flag, having us start out as an assassin, but becoming a Templar after we witness the arrogance and pride of the New World Order, such as when the disastrous Lisbon earthquake of 1755 is as a result of the Assassin's Creed ignorance and folly. And then we have Unity, which blurs all the lines because we get this joint assassin-Templar hookup to overthrow some common enemy, which are the Sage in this case, which is kind of just convoluted nonsense, but doesn't matter. We have some assassin-Templar love. So then, on top of the thematic similarities, in the 1700s tetralogy, all of these stories are interconnected so beautifully, which I think that makes them so rich. Just like how Revelations tied the Ezio trilogy to Altair. Haytham Kenway of 3 is the son of Edward Kenway of 4, Black Flag, and Connor Kenway of 3 is also the son of Haytham of 3. And Shay McCormack of Rogue, which is I guess is like 4.5, is a friend of Haytham of Assassin's Creed 3, and the one responsible for crippling Achilles, who was Connor's mentor of Assassin's Creed 3, and then the man who killed Edward Kenway of Black Flag, first mate Adewale, and also who was responsible for the death of Arno's father that started Assassin's Creed Unity, or 5. So all of these stories are interlinked with one another, and we get to explore each of these stories from both an assassin and a Templar perspective. By the end of Unity, we have this very rich and developed understanding of how the assassin-Templar conflict basically happened all over both Europe and North America in the 1700s. And it's why I think it makes a way more exciting and compelling universe to be a part in than maybe that first tetralogy, which was really only isolated to looking at more of the assassin perspective. And this might be a little bit of a stretch here, so bear with me, but all of this is so neatly grouped together. All of these 8 games are so nicely tied together with a bow, because 1 and 8, so Assassin's Creed 1 and Unity, have a narrative mirror, which ties all the games together. Because remember in Assassin's Creed 1 where you go off to kill Robert de Sabla, but whoa, turns out he's actually not that, and he's this Templar chick named Maria, and she was in disguise, and then suddenly Altair is like, what? I don't want to kill you. Change of heart. You're not Robert. I was here after Robert. But she's like the only target in the entire game where you suddenly have a change of heart. But I mean, like, come on, man. She is still a Templar. But whatever. Post Assassin's Creed 1, she actually leaves the Templar Order and joins Altair and marries him. And we see some of this in Revelations. And it's that story of the star-crossed lovers of the Templar-Assassin conflict come to fruition. Because I always thought it was weird at the time in Revelations that suddenly you could have a Templar turned assassin marry the Grand Master of the Assassins. Like, what? It's a story we don't get to see unfold, but it always left me with questions. So does this sound familiar to Unity with Arno and Elise, where you still have these both high-ranking assassins and Templars, and they're slowly becoming united in this romance? The love story of Unity is that sidebar love story of Assassin's Creed 1, which ties up the loose thread of the Altair-Maria plot with the mirroring of Arno and Elise. So the Mediterranean tetralogy sets up the player's understanding of the Assassin Brotherhood, and the 1700s tetralogy undermines our understanding with this deep discomfort. We explore the nuances and the gray area of the Templar-Assassin conflict. And yeah, sure, there's that ISO crap going on, but really we're focused on that Templar-Assassin conflict. And there is a deeper sense that each game is kind of adding lore or nuance to this world and this franchise. They're trying to ask questions about something, about this freedom versus order conflict, about propaganda, about choice, about the corruption of institutions, about hubris and greed, and how that can occur on both sides of the aisle, and that not all Templars are really these evil maniacs. But cue the laugh track, because Syndicate screws all of that up.
I told you not to disturb me!
Because the mechanical confusion of Syndicate might be obvious at first glance, the stilted storytelling of Syndicate is way more sinister and rooted, and it's the most boring, standoffish crap of the entire franchise. Yeah, sure, Origins and Odyssey are basically trying to erase all of the earlier games with their weird issue precursor Layla crap. We don't even have time for Templars and Assassins in those games anymore, and sure, whatever, that's fine. At least they're trying to do something. Syndicate isn't doing anything. It's filler. It just doesn't fit. Because you see, after these past 4 games, the 1700s tetralogy, that have made us rethink the Assassin-Templar conflict of what it means to be an assassin, of what it means to be a Templar, that Syndicate would have some sort of profound twist, or at least say something else. Like maybe how there's a new organization comprised of both ex-assassins and Templars who hate their former organizations, or maybe about how assassins and Templars have gotten so ignorant because they just keep on trying to create this self-propelling holy war that does nothing but put innocent lives at risk, or I don't know, something. Instead, Syndicate is just a reductive piece of crap. Assassins are good, Templars are evil. Industrialists are evil, and capitalism is bad, which is such a jarring thing for the Assassins, where industry and capitalism created the middle class, which one could argue is a sign of liberation from the old ruling aristocracy. Or maybe you could say, no, industrialization and capitalization just led to the exploitation or the re-exploitation of those not in the elite, and that those awful workhouses were just functionally another form of slavery, and that industry was bad. But you don't get the exploration of any of that in Syndicate, beyond just the mechanical system that you gotta go free kids in warehouses to get some cool shit. For a game franchise that lets you fist fight a pope of the Catholic faith, the apple seems to be falling farther and farther from the tree when it comes to taking any kind of risk or nuance in storytelling. The other most uncomfortable idea of Syndicate is that blind loyalty that Jacob and Evie show to the Queen of England. For a group of assassins that are constantly about usurping power, questioning authority, questioning law and order, about freedom, the sheer willingness to be a servant of the monarch of England during the mid-1800s, when literally the sun did not set on the British Empire, is just weird. There's no skepticism or probing of thought into the factions of Syndicate, and they just like to throw out all these notable Victorian figures to you to seem historically relevant and cool, but adds nothing to the nuance of the Assassin Templar plot or even all of the questions that assassins are supposed to ask. Instead, we have this really cheesy cutout Saturday morning cartoon evil guy, and sure, yeah, maybe we have some cool assassination sequences, but we don't get any new conversation about what makes Assassin's Creed so interesting, which is this struggle between assassins and Templars. These two philosophies, which for the past 8 games, we've started to question which one is right and which one is wrong, because sometimes it doesn't always seem so clear-cut. But Syndicate just goes, nah. And so from Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed Unity, we had evolving mythology and conflict, and we had the explorations of all of these themes, the folly of men, the pieces of Eden and how it can corrupt and liberate and so on, and all of these conspiracies and layers, but all of that leads us to nothing. Origins doesn't continue this story. Syndicate was the last chance for us to address some of these issues, but we don't even end in a place that's comparable to Masyaf, where all of this began. And you know, it's really sad, because I don't think we're ever going to be going back to these conflicts. Origins and Odyssey are a new direction. They're so heavily focused on Issue and Precursor and Layla that they're not really focused on these kind of deeply rooted political historical conflicts. Maybe they're not even Assassin's Creed games themselves anymore. And so Syndicate stands alone. It's that 9th game. It's number 9. It doesn't fit in the first tetralogy or the second tetralogy, and it's not really one of the 2.0 reboot games of Origins or Odyssey. It's the black sheep. It's confused about its identity and what it wants to be, and more importantly, it's that missed opportunity to ask some final questions about the Templar-Assassin conflict and maybe provide some answers, or if not answers, at least some closure to the saga I've spent hundreds of hours fighting in.